July 26, 2021. I will go ahead and call the Village of Weston Parks and Recreation Committee meeting to order. First and foremost, I want to welcome all the committee members, staff, and also the viewing audience for participating in this meeting. With that said, we'll go ahead and move on with number 2, roll call by recording secretary.
Clark is absent and unexcused. Corvino?
Here.
Easker?
Here.
Jean?
Here.
Zagami?
Here. And with quorum present, we'll go ahead and move on to number 3, approval of minutes from previous meeting, April 26, 2021. What is the pleasure of the committee?
So move.
Motion from Mr. Easker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Trustee Zagami. Any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, saying sign. The motion carries and the minutes is approved. We'll move on to public comment. I believe Mr. Ockwick contacted me and was speaking to the Parks and Recreation, addressing the Parks and Recreation Committee. If you can state your name and your address, that would be, for the record, that would be great.
Yeah, Nick Ockwick. I'm with the Wausau Central Wisconsin Convention and Visitors Bureau, 4097 North Poplar Road, Brasholt, Wisconsin. Just good afternoon, everybody. I know most of you, some of you, again, I'm Nick Ockwick with the CVB. I just wanted to follow up with the Parks and Rec here, and Sean, the Rugby Fest that we were going to be having. Again, I'm a middle person. I was working with the Village of Weston here and the Wausau Area Rugby Association. We were going to have this Rugby Fest and kind of have it a marquee event here at Kennedy Park. It kind of fell through, not kind of, it did fall through. And I wanted to apologize on behalf of the CVB and the rugby. It was kind of a last minute. Sean had to send out an email, and Jake, he kind of dropped the ball, not pointing fingers or anything like that. But I did want to give good news. We did, give back some funding that they wanted to use. But in subsequent meetings with them, they're hoping to they're going to transition from a summer fest more to a winter rugby fest. And again, looking at Kennedy Park, because of the rugby field there, they've had a winter fest over the years. They've held it out on Lake Wausau. So the good news is for Weston, hopefully, is that they would like to transition off of Lake Wausau and bring it again into winter times to the Village of Weston to Kennedy Park. And but I again just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what had happened with the festival. All great plans sometimes don't follow through or don't happen. And this was a situation where it was great planning. The execution on behalf of the rugby, didn't happen as much as they'd like it to. So low registration. It was just bad timing. And to be honest, with the COVID and kind of the summer of a revenge of vacations, a lot of the teams that they had talked to there were on vacations with their families. So that I just wanted to apologize to Sean and everybody how kind of it fell through at the last minute. Jake had apologized. He was supposed to let the village know and the parks know a little sooner than he did. But I just want to be transparent, keep the communication. We hopefully have some great things yet planned that we want to include the Village of Weston, and Kennedy Park's a great asset for the greater Wausau area. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I just wanted to pop in. Yeah, Hussein.
Is it another rugby team we could invite them, or is it a good idea to have a backup for next time possibly?
Yeah, I think the summer event that they wanted to do, there hadn't been really in the Midwest here or in the Wisconsin area. Again, this was a committee, and again, me just being with the CBB and representing tourism and bringing people into the greater Wausau area. They're the experts about the rugby, and going to all these meetings. We went to a number of meetings. We had Steve Cronin from Everest Tent. We had ordered tents, and we kind of again off the heels of what Irish Fest, what Jim Daly had already put in place for a couple of great years. We were going to try to play on the heels of that with music and family events. And again, without getting enough rugby teams here, rather than just putting it on just to put it on, and the nice funding that the village and with the CVB on the hold file, they thought that they would just, look to do something more in the future. And then they brainstormed and maybe said, well, we've already got this winter event that's already pretty successful. Let's just bring it over to Kennedy Park and utilize the fields. And now I don't know how wintertime comes, Sean, and being able to use, we'll have to talk about that down the road. But Again, I think they want to do something. The Greater Wausau Rugby Association wants to do something, and they love the fields here in Weston, obviously at Kennedy Park. It's set up perfect for them. So I hope we can keep brainstorming and bring something.
So this is different than what Jim Daly was doing.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And so this winter would be pretty cool, but we'd still like to have food and entertainment, make it a family event again. That's what they're promoting at the rugby. So, but few more information down the road, hopefully on that. But I just wanted to show up again and just explain it a little bit more that, you know, it just didn't work out, but just not to say it didn't work out. It was low registration. It was timing. You got kind of a late start at this. And then the family vacations, when they contacted teams from Minnesota, Colorado, all over the country. That's why I was excited about this with the CBB, being able to bring visitors here and fill the hotels and stuff and restaurants and everything over a weekend was that again, the COVID thing and everybody's taking vacations this year. Everybody's traveling. So hopefully we'll get past all that and we can have a super event, you know, if it's a winter fest or something. So that's pretty, I don't know if Sean, if you had any questions about it at all, or we obviously come to you for anything over there for the winter time, but we'll maybe have more discussions down the road and incorporate you obviously to keep you informed. So.
Yeah, no questions really. I just know that, I mean, they need probably volunteers is a huge issue too.
Yeah, it was. That was the other thing. I'm sorry. Part of it, this weekend, the Wausau Festival is going on, but there's also that kayaking event, the Flatwater over on Lake, and they had committed volunteers to helping that kayaking, canoeing, Flatwater event. So actually half of their, Sean, you're exactly right, half their volunteers, they were spread out too thin. And I don't think they really thought it through as much as we should have, even though we had multiple meetings. But yeah, I think moving forward, those will be the questions we need to ask them more, again, being the middle person and at the end, being the park and stuff like that, Kennedy Park. So we'll just have to be a little more questions to them that they can answer and stuff. Just saying, hey, we're going to do a festival. We need to make sure they have all their ducks in a row. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Is there any other members of the public who wishes to address the committee? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to educational presentation and reports. There are none. We will move on to policy issues, discussions, and recommendations. Number 5, discussion and possible action on donation of bench at the dog park. I believe Director Osterbrink, this will be yours.
Yes, so I did put together a request for consideration and explains the individuals who would like to donate a bench in memory of their parents' dog, and then also for their 40th anniversary. But it was basically in memory. He gave some information regarding, you know, how much the dog park community means to them, and you know, that they were daily visitors up until their dog passed away earlier this year. It's based, the request came in actually prior to us going through the donation policy, but I did go through the when I put together the estimate for the project. Besides labor, I did add the 10% for future maintenance, which was part of the donation policy that was approved by the village board. That's a small amount, but it would cover the cost of like replacing the wood on the bench in the future. Typically we see those benches every 10 to 15 years where they would need replacement of the wood. Obviously the cost at that point, based on right now, might be cheaper actually than it is right now, 10 to 15 years from now. The request is just to install a memorial bench with a memorial plaque which they will provide, and they will cover all the expenses to install and purchase the bench.
You have a picture of it?
I did include a draft drawing of it from the supplier. I did go through a couple suppliers for the bench. This is actually the one that I found was the most reasonable. So this is basically, like the other wooden bench that we completed in November of 2019, it's the same exact bench. It would be treated lumber, and the memorial plaque would be mounted on the back, in the center of the back of the bench. We have a lot of these wooden bench with galvanized frames out there. Right now, we really have like 3 different types of benches. We have concrete ones, we have a couple steel ones, but most of the ones that we have in the parks right now are the wooden ones like these.
Director Osterbrink, the question I have for you is, the individual, and forgive me for not knowing much about the history of the village of Weston here, but did the individual, the chef, am I understanding this correct, their last name?
Chefs, yeah.
Have they had a big impact on this park, this dog park specifically? I mean, I know that the Parks Department, when we had the discussion a while back about some individuals wanting to put a memorial at the Kennedy baseball area there in honor of their parents there, and we also asked the same question here.
Right.
So I guess that's my question here. Did these individuals have specific contribution to this park here itself?
No.
Well,
you know?
Sean, I think that as a dog park guy, I mean, we all know who it is. So,
Well, it's part of the policy that was drafted and approved earlier this year was, if they made a significant contribution or were an instrumental, like a well-known individual in the village. The most recent donation we got was from the Hetty Yeager family. So, everybody knows of Yeager's,
Right.
Yeager Auto Salvage. This is just the individual, people that had a dog, used the park a lot, want to make a donation to it. And, one of the other parts that we look at is it a usable amenity within the park? Where right now we have 2 concrete benches, a wooden bench, and then 3 picnic tables. So we know we're limited to the seating areas, and sometimes the seating area makes people congregate. But we do have everything we have is on the lower portion, which is because we don't want to concentrate the traffic on the upper area. So there is 1 picnic table over by the burner area where the second bag dispenser is. But right now that we're, pretty limited on where we have benches placed.
could you put the bench over there?
We could on that lower portion, probably off right behind the advanced disposal
Yeah,
area, right there, or, even another one would be to the east along the woods, that wooded area on the lower
Yeah.
portion there, because we only have the 1 bench and 1 table over there right now.
okay.
So just going back a little bit here, I mean, I know that there's members of the Board of Trustees who expressed that their concerns with the amount of us setting precedent where individuals would just keep continuously making these requests here. So I guess I just want us to kind of make sure that when we're talking here, we set a precedent as well too, to make sure that we don't, that individuals are just gonna constantly make these requests here as well. And from my understanding, Director Osterbrink, you said that if I recall, what you said was that the policy was drafted, that typically we would allow individuals to place memorials who have made a big contribution to that park, or to the village in a sense here, or in a sense there. Is that correct?
Right. I was just gonna bring up the policy just in case you wanted to go over it. For, a review.
And I just want to apologize. I don't know the chefs well, so I don't know their contribution. They may have contributed something that I don't know here, so.
Right. I understand that. And that's why, on our requests, we make them kind of draft the history, the background of the individuals, et cetera, on there. So. So this is the policy that was drafted and approved earlier this year. As far as placement of memorials, it goes through the process on, the procedure for approval. which is the first page here, which says, request for placement of memorials in parks. And it goes over what you need to do, if it needs to go to planning commission, village board, and parks. And then also one for, explains for right of ways, but not in a park, because it's a different process with the village. And then selection criteria. The first one is association between the village, the location, and the person, group, or event is exceptional and of great importance. Compelling justification for recognition of the memorial subject, and a memorial would be the best way to honor the association between the village and the person, group, event, or other subject being commemorated. A memorial would improve or enhance the village and not divert attention from the primary purpose of the area. Memorial items that provide a functional purpose or need for this area will be given a higher priority than items that typically would not be found in this type of setting. The memorial has timeless qualities that are meaningful to future generations. And then it goes over decision criteria like site selection, make sure that it's relevant, aesthetics, material, make sure it's durable, and then meets all codes and permit requirements. And it goes through types of memorials, pre-existing memorials, and donated memorial items. Which goes over the cost to purchase the item, cost for installation, and then endowment of 10% for total construction cost for the maintenance, future maintenance. And it goes over that, the village is not responsible for perpetual care of the item. So say, 20 years from now, it's just not feasible for continue maintaining it, that we're not, required to maintain it in the future.
Right.
So, but the decision criteria or selection criteria, that goes over basically the main 5 items of, what you should consider when, going over a request for a memorial.
Any other comments or thoughts from the committee? What is the pleasure of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion from Mr. Zagami to approve, a second from Mr. Easker. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. I'm gonna say no. Just want to note. Abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries, is an affirmative. So we'll go ahead and move on to number 6, discussion and possible action, award removal of Yellow Bank's restroom facility.
John, how many square foot is that?
How many square foot is
That facility restaurant they're gonna demolish?
the Yellow Bank restroom facility? Is like 200 plus the exterior concrete aprons, and then the vault pit also. So, but it's only like 200 square feet.
And it's about 10 feet high?
It's about, ceiling height's, it's an angled roof, so it's probably 12 feet to the peak.
$2,400 cubic feet. Okay.
Sean, the question I have for you is, there seems to be quite a bit of price difference. Is there a reason as to why?
Well, I think part of it's because contractors are quite busy, obviously. I struggled getting, a second quote for literally a couple months. I guess there's no reason on my end, except for the fact that the one contractor proposes bringing in a wrecking ball to bust up the
There's no reason for that.
vault in there. It was not a prefab vault, so that is one of the issues, just because it was built on site. So it has a massive amount of rebar and wire mesh in it, and that was the concern of the one contractor, that they would have to bring in a wrecking ball to break it up to be able to remove it. So that's, you know, we're not the ones that doing it, so whatever they propose to, do it is, you know, what they feel will work for the process. So I literally just went through, because there's a few contractors around here, not a ton, that do, actual, demolition like that. At least like if you did a search for demolition, you don't come up with a ton of contractors. A lot of them do excavating, and they probably would do it if you asked, but they don't, you know, like actively seek out doing demolition projects.
I have a question for Mr. Hushain.
Yes.
Obviously, you're kind of in this realm here. Does this seem kind of like the ballpark of the pricing for something along this line here?
The larger facility was probably about 65 cents or 60, maybe between 60 to 80 cents per cubic feet. This is going at $1.67 or 68 cents per cubic feet. So at the time, everybody's busy and they gotta bring their rack and ball, and get the steel in there. So I think it is reasonable. It is high, but it is not significant. So
That makes sense. So what is the pleasure of the committee?
Move to approve.
Is there a specific contractor that you would approve?
Eagle Construction at $4,025.
Okay, there's a motion from the trustees Gamache, second from Mr. Easker. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. We will move on to number 7. Discussion and possible action on portable restrooms at Yellow Banks Park.
So along with obviously the removal of the permanent restroom facility, we were looking at doing portable restrooms at this site until maybe another option comes up. Because we talked about sewer and water possibly crossing the river. If that'd be a viable option, just the expense to go with a, private well and private septic system was quite extensive. And the cost to use portable restrooms obviously is quite a bit cheaper, or we could spend, use it for quite a few years without having that expense. Besides the maintenance costs for having our own facility there, with a contracted service, they provide the cleaning, stocking, emptying, and it would be obviously one less facility that park staff would be cleaning. So maintenance was brought up during the discussion of, going to portable restrooms. And then, like I said, if other options come up in the future, because we know that even going to another pit restroom facility was gonna be, almost around a third of what a flush restroom was, but you're still talking $60,000 to do that. And, spending, $2,400 a year or even, $3,200 a year for portable restrooms, it's quite inexpensive, or because you could do $3,200 a year for the next 20 years to reach $60,000 for for the portable restroom costs. So, it was just deemed that we would use portable restrooms. We do have funds budgeted within our contracted services budget that we could expend for this purpose.
Just one question for you, Director Osterbrink. I'm assuming these are the only portable restrooms provider in the area here, or?
Well, the close ones, I mean, you've dealt with them before.
I kind of figured.
Literally, you can go to Stevens Point and Marshfield. I mean, there's, I think, 3 providers in Stevens Point. But within our area, our general area, I mean, literally Green Valley is the only one that's located like right here. They're actually located in the town of Wausau. Silver Peak Services has a location in Merrill and one in Woodboro, I believe it is. And I have seen them on the north end of town, but, just people getting back to you. I mean, I've called places and literally their phone messages, we are no longer taking additional accounts this season. And you still leave a message and they still don't get back to you. So I contacted Todd's Roll-Offs. They do roll-off containers, but they also do portable restrooms. And you do a Google search that shows they have a location like in Hatley. But it's pretty non-identifiable. I wouldn't believe Google in that. aspect, because they could be coming from somewhere else, you know? So really not a lot of great options. And like I said, you've dealt with it before. If you have a line to some other suppliers in the area, I'd happily contact them.
No, the only one that's usually very responsive is Green Valley Septic, so that's my experience.
Yeah, and we currently use them for the farmer's market, the disc golf course, the Ross Avenue launch. They've been reasonable. They've done good work. I mean, you know, if we have any issues, we contact them, and like you said, they are responsive. I mean, we had previously contracted with Burgoyne's, which they went out of business. And they were ones that, they were responsive, but they would just show up. You call and leave a message, you never hear from them, but they would take care of the issue usually. We're pretty much down limited, and you know, when you start dealing with contractors out of town, that unless they have a lot of ones they provide here, to get them to make sure they're here on a weekly basis, or if you have something that happens, you know, could be questionable that they could make it, like that day that you called, and when you get all of them blown over in one weekend or something, you know, so I mean, our recommendation as far as, you know, the luck we've had with Green Valley would be to use them. When I did contact them, they were, you know, it is quite expensive for the handicap units compared to the regular unit, because we pay $135 a month. The handicap unit is $400 a month. And then they, you know, just availability of them, because they use them a lot for just regular events. And it may not be out there for the monthly. They might not have a lot of them out there available for the monthly rentals.
Any questions or concerns from the committee?
I just don't like it, Mike, they stink.
Can't be worse than Yellow Banks right now.
Yeah, it reeks. You practically suffocate when you go in there if it is hot out there, that's all I gotta say.
I know what you mean, Boucher. So what is the pleasure of the committee?
Which one would you recommend?
Based on the cost, I was recommending, my thought was to go with the one regular and one
Right,
handicap
okay,
versus the two handicap. I mean, you're talking quite expensive. You're
Right.
talking
right,
$4,800 if you go with two handicap units. Right now, we provide one location. So if it's handicap or non-handicap, they still have to go to one location. So it's just the way it's set up with the two separate facilities on one side on each of the park. I mean, and for placement of these restrooms, I mean, we pretty much have to ideally put one on each side, for service and accessibility for them to pull in and pump them on a weekly basis and clean them. So I would recommend just doing one of each unit at the cost of $535 a month.
Another question I have,
Go ahead, trustee Scott.
how often it get used except the weekend probably, not during the week much?
They do get used during the week. I mean, we have a pretty high, I mean, if you go by Yellow Banks Park, pretty much every day, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 cars there on a regular basis between using the river or using the playground equipment or people just stopping for lunch. I mean, we know Yellow Banks restroom is probably our lowest used restroom based on what we stock and supply there, because people don't enjoy using pit restrooms. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, that's why we were looking at future flush restrooms, because we know we would enhance the use of that park. Or even a newer pit restroom. The county's going through and updating and changing theirs right now. And that's where I got the quote from for the CXT brand pit restroom. They've done new ones out at the Eau Claire Dells, just seen them. They've done new ones at the Old Plain. They're doing new ones at the their park in Rib Falls. So we know that would be better than what we currently have based on the one that was built in 1977. But portable restrooms, I mean, because we don't clean and we don't stock them, we don't really look in the Ross Avenue one. We don't look in the disc golf, but we know disc golf, of course, gets tons of use. Most of them probably use the woods, unless they absolutely have to. Because you are talking a portable restroom that's sitting outside right now in 88-degree weather. You can't make it smell good.
Is that the same in wintertime usage?
What's that?
Is that the same thing in wintertime usage of it?
Well, we don't have any winter usage.
Well, you're gonna pay $500 a month, every month, don't you?
Only May through October.
Okay.
So it'll be for 6
Yeah,
months.
6 months.
Right now, we only, because all of our other restrooms are flush, so they all get winterized.
Yep.
So everything gets locked up. We used to leave yellow banks open during the winter, just because you could. But there was obviously limited use in the winter, you know? So, but all the portable restrooms are only May through October typically. And we could adjust that based on, usage too. I mean, we know October usage drops off a lot just due to temperatures. So if we were looking to reduce the cost, we could look at, even change it mid-May to mid-October or something like that. You're definitely better off paying by the month than you are by the day or by the weekend. It's actually way cheaper. I mean, it's $135 a month for a unit, and if you rent it just for the weekend, it's probably $100 a unit.
Well, I mean,
You know how much it is.
yeah, we spend close to, I think we rent 20-some, 20-some portable restrooms, and I think they're close to 120. It costs just as much per month for that.
For a weekend, yeah. Yeah.
It's not much difference.
Yeah, because I've questioned them before too. They were gonna put one out I wanted it pulled out, and they're like, you're better just off leaving it in there because it's gonna be cheaper, because of the monthly cost. So they've only increased the price $5 since we started using them. It was $130 a month. Now it's $135 a month.
How about this question? Mr. Donner, are they working on that design for that bathroom facility there and
Yes, well, that was the direction of the board, was to
Included in
include it in the design. If we decide not to do it, then we can take it out. I don't think we certainly aren't looking at these portables as being a long-term solution.
you're right. I thought, if I remember right, the motion was to include it. We didn't talk about just design it, then think about it.
the motion was to include it in the design for the south side of the Yellow Banks Park for AE comp, correct? For the well house
We
design?
didn't build it because we didn't say anything, we're gonna discuss it or anything like that, part of that motion, if I remember right.
I can't recall. I'm starting to draw a blank.
I think it was just that the discussion was that the board could decide to remove it if the cost didn't balance out to.
Because it was my first motion, so it's right in front of my head, yeah. It was just the inclusion of the design.
Right.
But then I can't recall did the village board make changes to it, during our discussion? I couldn't recall.
No. So it's really just a question if the board pulls the trigger and builds the thing.
Right.
So-
I think when we get to it, we should make it's way ahead of time, but we should make a recommendation to the board to implement it, because it's portable stuff and forget it.
So going back to this, what is the pleasure of the committee?
For the time being, I would recommend we award the contract to Green Valley for one handicap and one standard unit.
There's a motion from Mr. Easter. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Corvino. Any other discussions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. And we will move on to number 8, discussion and possible action on the Yellow Banks well.
So I did add a little information regarding our most recent, this past spring, we have a well that's considered a private well that's for public use. So it's got a unique well number. We have to do a startup procedure and submit it to the DNR every year. If we don't go through and follow that process within 10 days of startup, then they will require monthly testing for the well. This year we ran into some issues. It was chlorinated. So last year we didn't start it, which could be part of the problem. We know that there's a lot of concern with facilities that were shut down for a year. But we chlorinated the well, and then as we went about to run and remove the chlorine, we had problems with the well pump kicking out. So We kept deferring the startup on it due to the issue. We had Scott Tatro look at it, and both the pressure switch and control box were bad. We were happy to hear that it wasn't the well pump itself. That was actually a used well pump that we had pulled out of a duplex over off of Zenzer Street when the business park was originally constructed. So we know it's aged pretty well anyways. He did replace the parts. We were able to run the well, and we did have the health department come pull sample, and it came back fine. But it made us start discussing this well, and like lack of usage is a huge thing. Water quality, the well's only 33 feet deep, the 30-foot casing. The casing is deteriorating to the point where we will have to replace it. It's just a cast iron casing, and it's rusted really badly, flaking off on the outside. Just wondering if it made sense for us to continue operating this facility. I mean, our annual cost for testing for the health department is $44. We usually have a gallon of bleach for chlorinating the well. And then obviously staff time to assemble it. And then, each year we have to winterize it. So, and then this year we had a, $100 cost in changing out some parts. And then, so after discussing it, we felt, is this really worth continuing? We don't see a lot of usage. The water is heavy in the iron, really heavy. I mean, when you turn it on, it comes out brown and smells like iron. You can get it to start running clear, but we don't see the use of it. It is really one of the only parks. We have 3 drinking fountains besides the one at the pool. We don't provide running water for people to drink at our parks. Mm-hmm. This is the only one that doesn't have that. Would have running or city or village water. So it is, like I said, it's a private well that's for public consumption. So there is some annual cost to it. There would be a cost obviously to abandon the well too, to make sure it meets the requirements. But, is it fiscally responsible to continue operating it, though we know that it doesn't really see a lot of use? I mean, most people are used to bringing water with when they go places. You go to a park. And I know that our staff, has commented plenty of times on the water quality. It does pass as far as California bacteria testing. But we have had to post it a couple times over the past 20 plus years as far as having some other issues, as far as allowing, young infants or females, pregnant females, that to not consume it, but we have not had any issues for a long time. This well is a previous hand pump well that we converted to an electric well from the county.
So just 2 questions, Director Frank, is if we were to make the necessary repairs to get this upgraded, doing replacement, do you have an estimate of how much it's going to cost, how much that would cost?
I don't. I mean, the other issue is obviously the water quality is not going to improve by us just making these changes. But I could get a cost to, replace the casing.
Do you have an estimate, just kind of like a ballpark? I'm not asking for something specific here.
I don't, because I've never had to replace the casing, and I don't know if they would have to replace the full casing, which the casing itself is 30 feet down, the well's 33 feet deep. Would they replace the full casing or just the top where this deterioration is? So they may have to completely, we have a roof hatch on it right now for pulling the well pump, but I don't know if they can do the repairs to the casing through that hole also. That would be more of Keith's background, Michael's background, that have done what, obviously wells, city wells or village wells.
I would think that they probably have to drill a whole well. It would have to be constructed to modern, current standards. I don't know if that would be, it'd probably be considered a public, it's not a high capacity well, I guess.
No, it's, like I said, it's a private, they consider it a private well for public consumption. And we actually have an exemption on it because the casing does not meet the requirements at this point.
So you have to drill another well, you gotta abandon this one.
Mm-hmm.
So still the cost is there.
Right.
These shallow wells are not good because they contaminate it
Right.
easy. And as you said, it's a high iron. just, you can tie that thing, put the chain around it, at the end, keep it the backhoe, pull the casing out, that's the way they do it.
That's right.
You can put the
At night,
rat night in it up to 5 feet below the ground surface,
Mhm.
and put the concrete the rest of it.
So the next question I have is how much would it cost for us to abandon this? I know you said there was some cost associated with it as well too.
there would be, I know it's something that, actually like Will and some other staff has been part of, at least letting people know how to abandon their private wells within the village.
Okay, so that whole thing is supposed to happen through a licensed well driller or pump installer now?
Okay,
So, yeah, there'd be some cost in there, I would think. Depending on how much work has to be done with pulling the casing, I would think around $2,500 or so, I don't know, it might be more than that. You asked about doing a new one, so that casing probably has to be a lot deeper than the one that's there now. I bet we're probably at $10,000 to $12,000 range to drill a new well. So, I think, yeah, regardless, as Shane says, you're gonna have to abandon this well no matter what, so.
Yeah, it's got it. Yeah, and then they can come back with the fiscal impact like it says. Right?
yeah, well, the other part is we actually have an exemption because the casing does not meet the current requirements. So it's supposed to be a minimum of 12 inches above ground level and it doesn't meet that. So when it was converted from a hand pump well to a, current setup, they actually gave us an exemption because it does sit up on a knoll a little bit, so they weren't as worried about, surface water getting into it. But that's the part of the casing that's having problems right now. And we don't know what's taking place underground. So
How much is away from the river?
how far away from the river is it? 100 feet?
Not far.
If that,
Yeah,
So it is contaminated from river.
it's safe to drink.
It's probably, but if you drill a new well, it's gonna be into the bedrock, I'm sure, right?
They can go deeper.
I'm thinking that's what would have to happen. But,
We knew that even with, when we were proposing to do flush restrooms, that well would not be usable. A new well would have been constructed to put flush restrooms, because that 33-foot deep well did not have the capacity
No.
to handle the restroom facility. So that's why the expense for a flush restroom is so high, is because the size of the proposed mound system or septic system that you'd have to put in to handle the capacity of a park usage, along with a well, and a new facility. That's why the expense is so high to do that, if the sewer water goes to the north side of the river, then we know that it would be a more feasible project to do something like that.
So what is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move to abandon the well at Riverbank Park.
There's a motion from trustee Zagami. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Corvino. Any
Question.
discussion?
Question.
Go ahead.
So staff can do that, Mr. Donner, or no?
I don't think we're not certified to do it, we'd have to be a certified, like I said, certified pump installer or a well driller on the abandonment. I guess we could do it and say I don't think we,
I used to do it with the.
right, no, we used to, that part of the code changed about 10 years ago, I think, where they said that you had to have a licensed person involved in the abandonment.
Yeah, I think all that we did is recommend to private owners
Yes.
how to do it.
I'll just make sure all paperwork gets filled out right.
Yeah, we can contact some well drillers. Drew's Well Drilling's out here in Ringle. I'm sure there's other
Sure,
ones.
Will would be familiar with who's being used around there.
Yeah.
Wayne is another one, but.
Even, I think the American testing,
I
they
think
have,
they do it.
they can do it. They're licensed to do it.
Yeah.
They can do it. And, well, you can look at they have a form, there is a form has to filled up and submitted to DNR.
Okay.
You can look at that and tell you what you can do and what should be done and how you're gonna document it. It's pretty easy things, really.
We have a good relationship with Patricia Rattle. She's the DNR representative out of the Eau Claire office that handles the wells. So she said, I already had mentioned that we may be looking at this. So I'm sure she can provide us with any information if there's something we don't know about, but like I said, I know Will has done, at least not done, but I'm saying, talked to residents that wanted to abandon their well and inform them the process.
Right.
So he can inform us how to do the process and then I can go from there.
Any other discussions? There's a motion, there's a second already. All those in favor of abandoning the Yellow Banks well, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries, and we will move on to number 9, discussion and possible action on Mockmuller Park vandalism.
So this was probably quite a lengthy RFC, but I wanted to go over some of the history of some of the stuff we've been seeing at Mockmuller Park. I mean, this year, starting last fall, it's pretty much been endless on the attention that it's receiving. We know it's remote. There's no houses direct view of it because of the woods. So a lot of people go out there and do destructive activities. So most recent were all the tables were flipped over last Saturday. They took all the tables out from underneath the shelter and flipped them all upside down. You know, it's not a huge situation, but it does obviously take time anytime they do that. One of the amusing ones that I didn't include in here was that they took a package of 300 forks and stood them all upright in the grass, clear plastic forks. And we couldn't see them all. So, I mean, it's a thing, it's a prank, it's called forking, but they took 300 forks and stood them upright in.
There's a name for that?
It's called forking, yeah. We have an employee here that had it happen to their yard too. But, you know, it was a joke. So, but for us, obviously, that's time consuming. That's something, you know, you're gonna have snapped off forks, sharp things in the grass that people, you know, tend to walk around sometimes barefoot, et cetera. You know, so, I mean, we had a sink fire, last Friday, right? Last Friday, somebody put paper towel and stuff in the sink and lit that on fire. They got most of the staining out of it. Unfortunately, I mean, everything's porcelain, steel, concrete, except for obviously the paper towel and toilet paper, so they usually zone in on that. But the biggest issue we started out with the spring was they literally destroyed all the stainless steel paper towel and soap dispensers that we had in there. Actually, the paper towel dispensers are stainless and the soap dispensers are plastic. So it has not had any paper towel or soap in it since May. Because literally we put them back up after that weekend and they were destroyed immediately again. We have replacement dispensers here, but we're just hesitant to put them in. So as we're going through the process, Michael had actually talked with Mark Dewitt from Schofield. So for their facilities, they've actually gone to time locks, electrical time locks with a transformer. So low voltage, has an emergency button on the inside so somebody can't get trapped in when it locks itself at a set time. And they have seen a decrease, but they still have seen vandalism, you know, so most of ours is happening during the day, is what we feel like is taking place. So by leaving them open during the day, it's still not gonna take care of our issue. You know, a lot of it last year or last fall we saw was, you know, with the alternative schedule in the spring was, it only happened on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so a certain age group of kids that had no school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, on Mondays and Wednesdays they were in school. So we've seen the kids, they've made comments. I mean, when they were redoing the roof last fall, they're like, we heard the kids walking and they said, oh, they're putting a steel roof on. Well, why would they make a comment like that, a 12 or 13-year-old kid? You know that they were the ones that were ripping the shingles off the roof. You know, this past week we had kids rip shingles off the roof at Sand Hill Meadows Park. So, you know, right now, it's just something that I feel like we should look at. And, you know, do we propose, if it's viable, if they're programmable enough, we could program them only to open at like Monday through Thursdays for baseball from 6 till 9. And when groups take place on the weekends. I mean, we talked about doing it because we're having so many problems in spring. We just talked about, well, we come in every weekend anyways. Just open them up on Saturday morning. We'll lock them back up either Sunday morning if there's no group Sunday, or we'll lock them back up on Monday. They'd only be open for those 2 days. But obviously, when you're providing a facility like that, you want it for all park users. You want it to be available during the day when
Right.
families are using the park. But right now they're using it and they don't have any paper towel or soap. And we know that everybody's been more aware of washing hands these days than they were a year and a half ago.
They have to bring their own.
Some of them they do.
And sometimes they do. They're not burning the toilet paper, so they must want to use the toilet at this point. They did turn one of the toilets, when they were in there. But we haven't, besides the dispensers, there hasn't been significant damage. They did bust the skylights out. We changed those. Part of it was because the skylights are plastic, they get brittle. So when they were on the roof, all they did was stomp on it and put their foot through it. The new ones, now they stomp on it, it just bounces back. So we did replace four skylights in the last year. We do stock a spare now because there were kids on top of the Sand Hill bathroom.
Get 'em a job.
When they were on top of the roof of the shelter last weekend too. So, it's just something that we feel like we didn't want to invest the time if we felt it was not viable. And the estimates that Schofield got, they actually forwarded to us. They only spent around $500 for 2 doors, but they, built the facility for it. So they already had the electrical in the right spot, ready to tie the transformer in because it goes to low voltage. And the door jams are all set up for the locks, where ours will all have to be modified. So we know the expenses could be more for us. So I don't know how much that is, but it's definitely something where we felt, if it's allowable and programmable enough where we can be flexible with it, I think it's a viable option. Mockbuehler's one of the only ones that we have electricity at the restroom facility. It's that one and the one at Kennedy. Otherwise, all our other ones don't actually have electrical inside of the facilities themselves.
Just a question, Director Asselbrink here. The additional changes that would need to be made, are we able to do that in-house with and I'm assuming, I'm hoping it's not gonna be too much more expensive than what we're thinking here. Like, it's not gonna come back to being like $5,000 or so, is it?
I guess it's possible, but
What's the locks cost?
well, like I said, the locks set up with the transformer that Schofield bought in 17 was around $500 for 2 doors. So, I don't believe it would be extremely expensive, but like I said, our door jams probably have to be modified.
Door jams, doors.
The door itself may need to be, then to wire in a push button on the inside. And obviously your doors have to function perfectly too. So there might be some adjustment to make the doors close by themselves, because if they don't close automatically, they all have automatic closures on them now, but I'm just saying, just make you aware that there could be some.
Right.
So it would just be looking to get an estimate to see what it would cost. But if they're not programmable enough, because we are out there at least twice a week, just for garbage and cleaning and stocking. So if we could program it right there, we wouldn't need like a Wi-Fi connection. Great, it'd be great if you could do it from your office and have Wi-Fi, but then you're paying cost for that. So it's something we could just program from. We have a chase area in there where the electrical comes into the facility, where we could go in and we could just program it weekly if we had different groups, different days. But I don't know if that's a viable option, and the other option, like I threw out there, was we are here Saturdays and Sundays. That's when most of our rentals take place. We could open them up Saturday morning and lock them back up on Monday and not have them open during the week.
Yeah.
Right now they're using them, like I said, without paper towel, without soap. So, and baseball's done for the season. So, it's just regular park users and then our groups, but,
That, just my opinion, 'cause when I come in on weekends, that one morning I was in at like 6 o'clock and there was 10 people out on that fitness trail. So you might have some
we're definitely gonna get
input
some.
on that?
Yeah, we'll definitely get some feedback from the users of the park if the restrooms aren't open.
It seems like an easy enough thing to explore and decide.
Yeah, I just don't wanna spend time on it if,
Right.
the committee doesn't feel like it's a viable option. So they sent us, City of Schofield did send over the 2 different estimates from 2 different suppliers they got. One was more expensive, but obviously we need something updated and we need them to look at what we have and see if it would work on what we have and go from there. I mean, I think staff could do like the wiring, wiring in the transformer and getting the wire to the right spot, but everything's solid concrete wall, so it would need to be in conduit and make sure that they can't destroy it, which we know they can anyways. Because they ripped the electrical boxes off the shelter, and that's all conduit and steel boxes too, so.
So what is the pleasure of the committee?
I recommend that we investigate the installation of programmable locks at Mock-Miller Park.
Second it.
There's a motion from Mr. Corvino, second from Mr. Easter. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries, and we will move on to future items. Next meeting date, are we planning to still meet monthly moving forward?
As long as we have items, we know as of last year, we had decided to take the regular monthly meetings for parks off the calendar because we weren't meeting regularly at that point. But as needed, more likely we're gonna have items right now for next month because I met with the fencing contractor to go over the backstop fencing replacement project at Kennedy. So we will definitely have that coming forward. I also have Everest Youth Baseball's coming forward with another proposal for moving the T-ball fields from Mock-Miller to Kennedy with possibly some temporary movable fencing. So they're working on that. So we already have at least 2 items that we will have for the August meeting. So we will be having the meeting in August, the 4th Monday of the month.
Okay, perfect. Moving on to 11, topics for future meeting items, future meetings. If anyone has any specific topics, please forward it to myself or Sean. With that said, we'll move on to remarks from staff. Anything from you, Sean?
Well, I know that you guys have probably, my communication has been pretty low for the year, for the summer. Things have been quite crazy with the pool being the busiest you could imagine that we've experienced in several years. And just, with it's like a brand new year because we haven't done it for 2 years. And then a second year with the YMCA managing the facility, where last year they didn't have to do much of anything besides guard the pool. Where this year they're, taking credit cards, selling season passes, all stuff that they didn't experience. So it was like a brand new year. I mean, Nate has been instrumental, obviously, with our software system and getting them going. But I mean, there's still questions. I mean, today we have our 3rd session and final session of swim lessons started. We had people coming in wanting to pay because we had pulled them off the wait list last week because we had over 20 people on the waiting list because all our swim lessons have been so full this year. Or switching levels this morning, so Nate was there, instrumental in flopping people from class to class, making sure if they were paid or not, and just making sure everything was working because we have Wi-Fi issues, we have printer issues. It seems like it's nonstop. We were hoping TDS would have been done with our aquatic center facility by the time we started the season, but they have not been back since May. They got the fiber to the building, put the modem in, did not wire it up, and they have not been back since. I guess their plan was to complete all 3 of our facilities at the same time, even though the aquatic center was the one we really needed. We've been struggling with Wi-Fi. We basically right now our Wi-Fi is 2 megabytes of speed there. So when our register is running, it sits there and spins, and you can't check people in because we have 2 megabytes of speed. So we're actually right now for the last 3-4 weeks we've been using one of our iPads that's used up there and hotspotting that, and we're getting 9 megabytes with that. So, but unfortunately, sometimes when they shut down, it reconnects to the aquatic center. They don't catch it right away. They start checking people in, realize it's slow. It's not connected to the hotspot. This morning I went in, made sure it was on there. It's just that communication, especially when none of the employees up there are yours. They're all Y employees. So you want to make sure that you're communicating everything. But I went up there because they couldn't print the closeout from the till on Sunday. And I'm like, how come they couldn't print it out? If they printed it out Friday, they printed it out Saturday. Well, the laptop was not connecting wirelessly to the computer because they were on the aquatic center Wi-Fi instead of the hotspot. So that none of this should be a problem because TDS was supposed to have us all done with phone service and Wi-Fi before we open, and here we are with 27 days left in the season. We don't have anything, and we would have 300 or 600 megabytes of speed. Hopefully all goes better for next year. But we know that there's a cost with hotspotting our iPad too, because you're paying so much for data, but it's so much faster. 9 is way faster than 2 for processing. So we definitely need to get that upgrade completed. And Nate's been trying to get them to come back and just finish up that facility because the fiber is actually in the building and the modem is sitting there. So there's not a lot left to it because all their stuff is wireless. So, so that's been a little bit of frustration. We have had issues with the SCS play structure within the pool. So I think I touched base with it. So from the beginning of the season, typically after being shut down for 6 months plus 9 months, we turn on the play structure in the spring. We usually get some debris, some rust chunks coming out of the play structure. And this year was extremely bad compared to previous years where it literally was the first couple times we turned it on, we clean it up, and then we run the whole season. Our play structure just continuously spits out rust chunks right now. I talked to a play structure expert who's located in western Wisconsin, and he said due to the age of our play structure that the interiors of the pipes have deteriorated so much that the galvanized coating is gone. And he said mostly it happens at the 90-degree bends where the water has to turn and it starts to go into the metal. So literally we have rust chunks coming out of it. We experienced some really, really bad days. We initially had it on. We haven't had it on since the second week of the season. It's been shut down. One day within the time they called me, within an hour, by the time within an hour from 1 to 2 o'clock, we had 8 people cut their feet from the rust chunks in the bottom of the pool. So we tried for a few weeks to turn it on, turn it off, clean the pool, see if we could get rid of it. We know it's not the pump because we're still running the pump for the floor fountains, but we shut down the play structure and now we don't get the debris. Every time we turn the play structure on, we get the chunks. So we will be coming forward with some options. We do have in the CIP plan replacement of the structure. There is another viable option, which is they do completely refurbish. They remove the current structure, they will refurbish it. They re-galvanize all the pipes, make sure they fix everything, powder coat the exterior. So I'll probably be bringing back both options. I did meet with Newman Pools. They were here 2 weeks ago. And he was gonna send us some information on structure suppliers. During our 2017 evaluation, they estimated a replacement of $350,000 for the play structure. So I figured I'd look at getting a refurbishment price just to see, because they have a special tool that goes inside all the pipes, removes all the debris, sandblasts it, I'm assuming, and then they re-galvanize all of them. So that will be coming sooner than later, hopefully. We'll be working on that. So the other projects we've been doing, the railing down at Brook Court has been replaced. The contractor that was scheduled to do it and received the quote for doing it because it was an insurance from last July when the river knocked the railings down. Well, unfortunately, he fell off a roof, and he's a contractor that works by himself. So he was laid up for a period of time, got really far behind. So staff ended up rebuilding the railing 2 weeks ago. So they installed the new railing off Brook Court. Currently, they're working, some of the staff, along with a staff member from the street department, is working on this public safety building landscaping project. They worked on it last weekend and worked on it today also. Hoping to wrap most of it up by the end of the week, but see how that goes. The dog park mowing, annual mowing is scheduled for tomorrow, so I'm sure we'll hear some feedback as we always do because you can't get it done fast enough. If you're closed for a day, it's, people just don't understand that. I mean, it's about as fast as we can do it, get it done and it's usually 6 to 8 hours. It's not, unless there's a breakdown. As long as we don't run into any problems. We've looked at other options because we've had other people approach us and say, well, why don't you cut and bale it and have a farmer use it? And I said, well, because then it would be closed for 3 days, between the cutting and the.
We did, hey, as a dog park person, we just resent that you closed the door at all. And the other thing is some of us thinks it looks like our dogs look like lions running across the Sahara or through the jungle when they run through the long grass. So yeah, I think my dog looks much cooler when she runs through the long grass, so.
So as some of you know, as it is a requirement as far as it being a landfill. So the annual mowing is required regardless. We have mowed the paths 2-3 times out there this year. And we will complete the trimming around all the test wells and boxes, because that's another thing. Obviously, we got to keep all the vegetation knockdowns because we don't need anything penetrating the cap. And it makes it much easier for the annual inspection too, if they can see without the tall grass. But like I stated before, the pool, I mean, it's busy today, but literally that first week and a half of 80s, 90s that we received in June, we definitely set some records for attendance, sales. Concession stand sold more than they ever have in the month of June. Within the first 9 days, they did, I think, $10,000 in sales in food. So, I mean, it's been extremely challenging to be that busy too, because you go from being that slow last year to being busier than we've ever been. We've experienced some days where we're short on staff. Yesterday we had a 400-person day and we were definitely short-staffed. So we actually ended up closing the drop slide. So that took 2 lifeguards out to focus on the rest of the pool. But because we have a staff that is also swimmers, like 2 weeks ago when the national meet was going on, we lost a bunch from Wednesday through Sunday because they were gone at the national swim meet. So it's great to have them because we know they're very skilled swimmers. But when they all compete in the national meet at the same time, that makes us a little shorter staffed. So, I mean, things are going pretty well. We definitely, our revenue's up, our past sales are up. And now we just, hope to make it through the end of the season. We know things get tough usually. After getting beat on for the last 2 months, things start to break. I walked in this morning, paper towel dispensers are broken, soap dispensers are broken. And I'm like, yeah, this is the end of the season stuff that usually you walk in every day and there's something broken every day or something that that needs some maintenance. But, the rest of it, I think, has been going all right. So.
Thank you, Sean. Any comments or remarks from Jessica?
Nope.
Keith?
Unrelated matter, the construction for the new municipal facility is underway. Clearing on the site is taking place. I know Dino's made a few comments on that. The reason for the detour today was the underground utility connections being made to serve that facility. So anyway, things are kicking off.
Wonderful. Remarks from committee members, Mr. Corvino, Trustee Uzagami.
No.
Mr. Isker, okay. Hearing none from me other than the fact that I forgot entirely about that construction there. So when I'm going back to the office tonight, I'm not gonna take that route. So with that said, 14, any announcements or requests? Hearing none, we'll move on to 15. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Isker, second from Mr. Corvino. Any discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries and we are adjourned at 5:39. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yep.